All right, welcome to learning how to do a landscape. Landscapes are one of my favorite things to do because it's very easy if you know what you're doing to make a pretty cool looking uh, landscape fairly easily as long as you are layering things the way that you want to layer them and making them look interesting. Now, before I can get into all of that, I need to make sure that I get three vocab words out of the way. The first one is foreground. Now, what foreground is objects that are close up to you, about maybe even a few inches to a few feet. After foreground is your middle ground. Middle ground are objects that are kind of far away. Not super far away, but kind of far away. Anywhere between from a few feet to a few miles. It could be anywhere from, like I said, 20, 30 feet away from you to, 5 or 6 miles away from you. The last one is your background. Your background is any object that is very far away to infinity. Meaning, if I'm looking up into space, if the sky is dark, then I'm looking into space, which goes on forever and ever. So you've got your foreground close up, middle ground kind of far away, and then your background, which is something that might be a couple miles away to forever. So, looking right now, let's look at what they actually look like. I'm going to do them in different colors. I'm going to make the blue is going to be my foreground, my red's going to be my middle ground, and my green's going to be my background. So if I'm going to draw just a quick sketch of what I'm talking about as far as a foreground, middle ground, and background, then this is what it would be. Let's put something first in the foreground. So I'm going to right here just make a side of a hill. Maybe I'll put over here just some trees. Okay, again, a couple feet away from me. So I've got here tree, maybe, and you can have multiple layers on this. So maybe I'll put like some grass and a flower, just some things in the foreground. So that would be my foreground element. This is something that's only a few feet away from me. I could walk to it if I needed to. The next would be your middle ground. Middle ground is something that is far away to something that, like I said, is only a few feet to a couple miles. So now I've got my foreground here, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to let's just make like a little like bank over here. Maybe this will be a river. Now notice when objects are far away, they're smaller. So I'm going to make the river small, and then it gets a little bit closer. Maybe I'll put some other trees over here. And again, I'm just sketching this out, so it doesn't have to be perfect. So there we go. I've got some trees in my middle ground. So that would be my middle ground. Now the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make my background. My background would be things that are very far away. So in this case, I'm going to use mountains. So I'm going to put some mountains back here. Just like that. And then maybe I can put some clouds up here. Clouds are far away. Okay. So all this back here is my background. So what I've got now is I've got my foreground here, objects that are close up, my middle, which are objects that are kind of far away, and my background, which are objects that are very far away. Let's look right now at a painting of a professional painting of a landscape. Yes, this is a painting. Now, with this one, this has also a foreground, a middle ground, and background, but it's a little bit harder to see than the one that I made. So if you look right now, I'll again do this in blue for my foreground, red for my middle ground, and green for my background. Let's look right here. If I'm just going to trace over this real quick, you're going to see that this right here would be my foreground. Objects that are close up. These trees over here are in my foreground. all of that is my foreground. So all of this are things that are the closest to me from where I'm viewing. Now what I'm going to do next is I'm going to trace over where our middle ground would be. So the middle ground is something that's moderately far away, right over here. You can see these trees right here. They go down below this, and then they come back up the other side. Now there's fog here, but obviously you're not really going to be able to see it. So right there, that would be my foreground. And then the last part of it would be the background, which is objects that are very far away. So I've got a piece of a mountain right here that's very far away, and then I've obviously got this big mountain right here that's very far away. And I've got clouds and things in the background that would also be considered my foreground. So notice that this professional painter has the same things that we can easily put into a painting in the foreground, the middle ground, and the background. One of the things that you're going to see a lot when I have the rubric or when I'm explaining a landscape to you is that I'm looking for different planes, and I want overlapping planes. What a plane is that's basically talking about your foreground, middle ground, and background. This plane is your foreground. Think of it as a flat object, that if I was going to fill it all in, this object right here would be in front of this object, and then this one would be in front of this object. You're creating 3 planes, plane 1, plane 2, plane 3. Technically, it would also be plane 4, which would be the sky. But you've got 1, 2, 3. 3 planes, a foreground, a middle ground, and background. So when I use the term plane, that's what I'm talking about. Now what you really want is you want interesting planes. You want them to interact with each other. Here's what I'm going to be talking about. If you look right here when I did this one, I've got crossing over planes. I've got one that comes this way, I've got another one that comes straight this way, and then this one kind of tilts this way. A bad landscape is one that looks like this. This is a bad landscape. Plane number 1 might be kind of like this. Plane number 2. Plane number 3. Okay? Kind of boring. 1, 2, 3. They're not really even showing me that they're there. Maybe I'll put a little road in here. It starts out far away and it gets a little bit closer. So that looks a little bit more interesting. But what we really want to see is we want to see the planes are interacting with each other. So what I mean by that is if I'm going to draw this exact same drawing over here would look a lot more interesting if I maybe had it come like this, and then this plane kind of went like this, and then the mountains kind of went like that. That looks more interesting. I've got a diagonal one going this way, I've got another diagonal one going this way, and this one's going this way. They're interacting with each other. They can even overlap in places. For instance, let's say I go back into this one. One way that I could make this more interesting is let's add some cactuses. So I'm going to put a cactus right here. Maybe I'll put another cactus over here. So now all of a sudden, I'll put some cactuses back here to show some size. So you can see that now all of a sudden that I've got these objects interacting with the background, that starts to make it look a little bit more interesting because I'm overlapping the things behind it. So what I really am looking for is I'm looking for overlap, and I'm looking for like non-parallel. I don't want to see them all go in a straight line. Parallel meaning 1, 2, 3. I want to see something like 1, 2, 3, or something like that. That would look a lot more interesting. If you don't believe me, let's look at one that's an actual professional painting. Here again is one by Thomas Cole. Let's look at this. Where are our foreground and middle ground and background? Well, right here, we've kind of got 2 foregrounds. You can see there's a foreground right here. Okay, I would even consider maybe even this tree. So you've got your foreground right here. Notice it kind of slants. Then you've got your middle ground right here that kind of goes up and in. And then you've got your background, which is all this stuff back here. Let's look at this. I planed it out, meaning I shaded in the things that are actual planes here so you can see where the different layers are. You can see plane number 1, plane number 2, plane number 3. It kind of almost creates a painting inside of a painting. There's like these things blocking out where we need to look. So this is really, when I talk about not having parallel planes, I'm talking about things overlapping And when I talk about a foreground and background, I'm talking about, do you have three different planes? Your foreground, middle ground, background, and then also add the sky. So that's what we're really looking for in a landscape. Does it overlap? Does it have non-parallel planes, meaning they zigzag out? And does it have a foreground, middle ground, and background? If you add those three elements to any single landscape, it's going to look semi-interesting. So keep that in mind when we go through this, because it's on every single rubric that has a landscape in it.